Hey everybody, welcome to Project Zero, and I'm Shabir Sultan, music artist, film composer, and your host for the show. What better way than concluding the season finale with the legendary pop icon of Singapore, Dick Lee. Dick Lee is a singer-songwriter who pioneered the use of Asian elements in his pop compositions that earned him regional acclaim. He's best known for his landmark album The Mad Chinaman that released in 1989, co-creating Singapore's first major homegrown stage musical Beauty World in 1988, and penning the popular National Day song Home. Dick Lee was awarded the very prestigious Cultural Medallion in 2004 and has not stopped inspiring younger generations. The way Dick Lee has infused Asian elements into his own brand of pop music is something which is truly inspiring for a conversation that is related to discovering the Singapore sound. Joining us today in this final episode of Project Zero is Sazairi Sazaili, a Singaporean musician and singer-songwriter who rose to prominence after winning the third season of Singapore Idol in 2009, which was judged by Dick Lee. In 2022, Sazairi became the first ever Singaporean to reach 100 million streams on Spotify with his single, It's You. Sazairi is one of the artists who has not allowed himself to be boxed up as a reality show winner. He has created a path of his own and built a name for himself as a talented musician and a gifted songwriter. This is Project Zero, a journey to discover the Singapore sound. All right, people, Dick Lee in the building, yeah? And Sazairi, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you very much for joining us on Project Zero, a journey to discover the Singapore sound, bracket sounds, because there could be more than one sound.
Yeah.
To start off the conversation, I want to talk about identity. Because when you talk about Singapore sound, it's a particular, occurrence, event, something that we're trying to define, which is so intangible. But that kind of correlates to the Singaporean identity itself, which is constantly changing. Like ocean waves. It's never constant. It's always in motion and transformation. Of course, we got Dick Lee in the house, so we got to start with Dick. How do you see the Singaporean identity? What does it mean to be a Singaporean? Maybe I won't even ask who is a Singaporean, but what is a Singaporean?
For me, the issue of being Singaporean first it became important for me when I was a teenager trying to write songs. And my songs were in English and they were copying my idols who were Western artists. And then I realized that, I was just mimicking them. But then in the 70s, the whole issue of Singapore identity did not exist. It wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
We were Singaporean.
You were the first.
Yeah, but it was only like 5 years prior that we became Singapore, 1965. And no one really talked about it. And we just took it for granted that, okay, so this is the next phase. Before that, we were part of Malaya. And we didn't think even of ourselves as Malayan. I don't even think. We were British.
Oh, that blows my mind a bit.
Crazy,
Did we think of ourselves as British? No.
Yeah.
And so we've always been colonized and, we're part of something else. So the whole issue about being Singaporean, when I first thought about it, it was non-existent. And so that's why I wrote Fried Rice Paradise. I mean, I wrote that in 1973. So, yeah, I know. I mean, and I was not just trying to do something Singaporean, but then, we can go into that later. But the point is that I then spent the rest of my music career, trying to find this identity. So if you talk about identity, and I hear you guys now talking, in general, everyone is quite sort of flippant about it. Oh yeah, Singapore identity, but they don't know the trials and tribulation that at least I went through to get to that point.
Yeah.
Let's say to even write home. So it's been a big issue. So now if we want to talk about what is this Singapore identity, it is exactly what we are now. Everything that you guys and people younger than you, next generation, take for granted, right?
I think to add on to that also, Dick, is that it's also we as the younger generation of Singaporean musicians, we also feel the same thing, I feel, right? In a sense where I used this analogy once, right? Is that we don't get our water from where we are, right? Everything that we consume comes from outside.
Now
of
we get a little bit
Yeah.
from where we are.
everything,
I
right?
knew what.
Depending on the usage, but everything that we have, we are so used to taking it from outside.
Yeah.
Then that's just our identity is that like I take this from here, I take this from here, I take this from here. Even water we take from outside. Even music, like
Influences.
influence from Western music. So
Yeah.
like that as for me, I agree with exactly you said. Like at the start of my career, it was mimicry, you know, because you don't know anything else outside what you being fed in music. So the more you mimic, the closer you get to mimicking your favorite Western artist. The question will then pop up to you like, wait, what? Why am I?
Yeah.
But you all have one advantage over me. We are a bit of a CMI here, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
Chinese,
we are.
Malay, Indian, right? So you have that ethnicity which is clear to you. As a Chinese Peranakan, I did not. I can't speak Chinese.
Interesting. Yeah.
I can't speak Chinese, and I don't feel, I don't feel Singaporean. My Malay, so just can get by, like speak to my grandmother like that. So I've never had that this in your blood, it's your history. I didn't have that to draw from. It's a bit blank for me because I'm 7th generation Singaporean,
Wow. Wait.
Yeah,
What?
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah.
So my first ancestor came to Singapore in 1786.
I love that you know that. I love that.
my
like, their
mother
records.
was. So
Like he knows the date, man.
On the 16th of March.
and we did a show
Yeah, down the line.
down the line.
Oh, I have so many stories about that. Anyway.
You went to Trace, I went to Trace. I went to find his grave and everything. But the thing is that because it's so long ago, the whatever roots that I'm supposed to have, I did not feel them. I couldn't find them.
You know what's really interesting also? Is that through this whole process of trying to become a musician, finding my sound, finding my identity, I realized that I'm not even Malay.
What?
How weird is that? Right?
Really?
Right? Like
Yeah,
tracing everything down.
So what are you,
We
man?
found out that my grandma is Chinese, adopted. And then my grandpa that married my grandma, he's from Kalimantan.
Oh wow.
So
that
he's
makes him what?
like a tribal,
Tribal.
come from tribal blood.
Borneo, right? Is it? Like
yeah.
Borneo.
Kalimantan. So it's this place called Banjarmasin. And so my mother is purely Javanese. And growing up, I spoke bahasa at home. Like kalau di rumah kayak bahasa Indonesia gitu. Tapi in school, it will be like, kenapa At home, it's like,
Right.
So,
that makes sense. man.
I was confused my whole growing up years all the way up to my 20s. I was confused because everybody tell me you're a Malay guy, but deep down I'm not like, if I tell the Javanese that Malay and Javanese are the same, there's some problems
sure.
are going to arise.
And I think I do have that struggle as well because I guess you see all of us like from the outside, it looks like we're having quite an easy time.
How many
But when we start
generation are you?
talking-
How many
I'm only second generation
right?
Singaporean. Yeah.
That's average, Singaporean.
Yeah.
The second generation.
Yeah, I am from my paternal side, I'm the first generation, but my maternal side, I've been here for a very long time. We can't trace back who's the first one.
Interesting.
Because my grandmother is a Malay and Pakistani mix.
Interesting.
So they were already in Malaya for a long time, you see. And I got the same struggle as well. I mean, at the end of the day, you're Indian, but you're Indian Muslim. And that kind of changes the complexion,
right,
you know?
You start to realize that we always try to push ourselves into these. We have a lot of boxes. And earlier on, we needed to push people into here to sort of figure out the general
To
landscape.
understand, yeah.
But now that we are here in these boxes, we realize, oh no, I'm in this box, but there are many tiny little boxes within the box. And that's the beauty, I think, of discovering whatever it is being Singaporean or discovering within music, finding the Singapore sound, is that there's a lot here that we haven't even start talking about yet. Like how did my ancestors get here? What kind of music they listen to? And learning all that, it really informs me, right? Like, oh, no wonder I like this. No wonder I gravitate to these
but
things.
the thing that made me, I'm now listening to your stories, right? I think the thing that drove me to focus on identity is that I don't have many of the little boxes. I have those little boxes, but if you say that a lot of them are about ethnicity, being 7th generation, I'm so far removed from the Chinese part of me.
Yeah.
So I could only focus on the Singaporean part.
Yeah.
But there was a big hole. There were no answers. And if we just if I could just mention about Fried Rice Paradise, when I wrote that, my attempt to make it Singaporean was I put Singlish in because that's what we knew, right? And even Singlish wasn't really very much identified.
Like a thing at that
time.
point, like,
Not
yeah.
yet, So I put our colloquial English in, and the song got banned by the government.
Yeah.
So that only told me that, okay, there's maybe this Singaporean thing is not good. It's not what we should move away from that. We should not, don't even think about that. Just be more international, be more whatever, be more Chinese, whatever it is, But I didn't feel Chinese. And I didn't feel international. I just felt like I'm here and that's all I know, And yet it's not good. It's not seen to be good.
Isn't it interesting that at all levels, right, throughout, you see like at all levels, up to down, bottom to top, everybody's sort of trying to figure it out also.
Yeah.
They're like, good or not? We don't know. You ask the people all the way at the top, they're like, worth it or not? Good or not? They're still like, I don't know, man.
Okay, in what sense like let's say you guys trying to figure it out? I mean, like, what are you doing? How much has this issue of identity bothered you?
I think, Dick, the key difference, right, from your time to what it is right now, and probably the future generation, because we had Gene, Seja and Shaza, who represent like the very new cats in the industry, and they came on the show as well, and I kind of got their perspective as well. In your time, the disadvantage was there was no such thing as a conversation about Singaporean identity. So you had to figure it out. It's a blank piece of paper and you had to start, drawing things in. And then when it comes to our time, we are kind of like, we are quite adaptable because the migrant generation, we started off with, probably we saw people playing cassettes and CDs, grew up in the 90s, right? Yeah. And then we had to do a shift over to YouTube and the digital media front and stuff. So for us, it's a mix because we don't have a common identity anymore. At least at that point, there was soccer to rally behind. There was, the whole Malaysian Cup. So you know what it means to be Singaporean. At least go and chant, the ole ole and, do the Kalang wave. And then there is Asia Bagus to check out and, feel like, did you watch it last night? That kind of thing, yeah. There's Pot
Not born yet.
I was watching Asia Bagus when Sheila Majid was on.
There you go, yeah.
And I was just like, I want to be
this. Crazy, right? Yeah.
I want to be this.
And when there is Pot Chukang going on or Under One Roof going on, we're probably all watching. And the next day we can have like conversations about it. You should check out last night's episode.
It's a point of reference for everybody sharing the same thing.
For everyone to come together, no matter what race you are, what language you speak. But now we don't have that. It's like super saturated, and everybody is in a silo of their own, consuming from different media sources and stuff. I don't see that as a problem, but it's an observation as an artist and someone who's part of culture. I have to make that observation, right? So today when we sit down and talk, Cesare could be watching anime. I could be watching some reality show, and you could be watching stuff on TikTok and YouTube.
Netflix,
huh? Yeah. So it changes now so much that we don't have a common conversational topic when we come together. Everything that we talk about could be so divergent, and that becomes a problem for the Singaporean individual and artist as well.
Okay, another way to look at it is this. I feel that in the course of my life, right, and my work, when I've been trying to make a Singapore song, I found it very tiring. And I found it, many times I found like I was forcing it. In fact, the point I think we are at now, is that we don't think about it anymore, because we don't have to. For example, Americans don't talk about being American. They are just American.
That's so interesting because that's the process of this album that I just released last year. That was the entire process, right? Is that like, I've been doing things subconsciously inserting my Singaporeanness without realizing. Let me describe it to you. I have this song called Memory that is just, when I listen to it, right, it's a bass line, a slow drum kit and a guitar, right? And when I was writing the albums on this, the songs on this album, the first thing that I reached out to, because I was in Bali, I was by the beach, I was really reminded of Singapore the way I grew up. Because me and my parents, we go to the beach all the time.
That explains why the whole album has got like an island vibe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we have forgot that about ourselves, right? That we are actually an island. You don't even think about it because there's so many buildings, but Singapore is an island. And I feel that's my dissonance with the country, right? Is that we're supposed to be an island, but we're pretending not to be. So that's my dissonance. So every time I try to write a song for the album, I subconsciously picking up a classical guitar, playing it. After days, my producer asked me, why you pick up the classical guitar? Then last time at Fajar Shopping Center, right? The bookshop got 2 guitars, okay? One is the steel string acoustic, one is the nylon string acoustic. The nylon string kapok guitar is $20 cheaper than the steel string guitar. So all the Malay kids will be like, lebih murah, this one, cheaper. And that informed the sound of me playing guitar for hours until midnight at the Void Deck. I'll play with my friends, play Jiwang songs, play whatever on the classical guitar. And without realizing, I'm like, this is weird. Then he asked me, why did you pick up the classical guitar? And I'm like,
as opposed to
inadvertently,
steel string.
Exactly. Inadvertently, this is my Singapore sound. You know? Like whenever I go downstairs, my friends will be playing classical guitar, not steel string guitar, just because that's the cheaper option, you know? So the first 2-3 songs in my album starts off with a classical guitar. So I'm like, these are the little ways that I have inserted myself as a Singaporean without thinking about it. And to me, that is the most satisfying thing.
And I think beautiful art comes when you are subconscious or you're unconscious about
going
it.
back to what you said, it's like when you don't think about it. You just be honest with yourself, where you come from, what is your experience of where you come from, and everything else will flow. Because I thought about the Singapore sound for 10 years. I mean, it's something that we get asked a lot, right? Like you as an iconic songwriter in your own right, and you in your own right, everybody will ask you, so what is this Singapore sound? The more I think about it, right, the more I'm like, if we really pinpoint it, it will really sort of be the death of us.
Yeah, true.
Because diversity is our game, right? And for example, during your time, I noticed, I don't know if this is true or not, I noticed that there was a huge British invasion sort of influence. Yeah. All the bands were playing like the Beatles, quote unquote, 70s, 80s.
What period are you talking about? 60s,
70s, 80s. Everybody had like a Brit band set up.
Yeah. I think 60s and 70s.
70s onwards,
when the British invasion of America happened, it happened all over the world, including Singapore.
The Beatles.
No, correct. And because of our colonization, it's heavier influence here.
Yes,
our media comes from there. And then you realize, okay.
We still have the post-colonialist mindset, right? And the hangover from that.
Exactly. And then in the 2000s, for example, right? Sorry to cut you off, but in the 2000s, you notice there's a wave of singer-songwriters. Yeah. Because all these kids who have spent their last decade or two first time living in HDB suddenly now cannot sing so loud. So everybody suddenly a soft singer-songwriter.
And also YouTube helped to, encourage.
Yeah, and then YouTube sort of projected all of this.
2008, YouTube became like really a thing at that point. Then you start thinking about YouTube as well when you want to upload your music, not just CDs and stuff. And I think that's constantly changing us. Just like how policies, economy, infrastructure, all these things are constantly changing Singaporean identity and the Singaporean artist. So I want to ask Dick, what was the struggle, for you in kind of creating the kind of art that you wanted to create? I know, of course, the obvious ones are, there's already like a non-existent market. Like now, I know it's very noisy, we'll come to the conversation later, but it can still do something and put it out there. There are platforms, but no one is going to hear you at that point, right?
Yeah, it must have been so tough.
Yeah, and what made you think that leaning into the Singaporeanness of me will help me promote this? Because I don't think that's what people will think. They'll think, okay, how can I conform? Sound like, this person, sound like that person, so that's the rage right now. Prince is the rage, I'm going to sound like Prince. I'm going to be the Singapore Prince. But he was the Singapore... Nobody is the Singapore's Dick Lee, and there's only one
Dick Lee.
I tried
to be the Singapore everything lah. You do try because those are your influences. You can't help that. I make Western music, right, in a Western idiom, right? I write in English, and I'm influenced by all the Western music. What I tried to do was I tried to look at my Asianness. So I tried to look at my Chinese side, for example, but then I realized I was looking at it from like almost like a Western point of view, whereas you both had you were surrounded by your ethnicity. It's part of you. You just have to look inside and you can find it. For me, I had to look and I said, "Oh, what is this so strange? This ching chong. No, like even I started to think of it that way as an almost like
almost unrelatable to you also.
So I applied it, and that's what I had to do in the beginning. And then when I kept doing that, and then I realized that, hey, a Westerner can also put a guzheng or a hu in it, and then what? Does that make it Asian?
Yeah,
You know, so I realized at that point you can't just keep putting it superficially.
Right.
It has to come from inside. But I'd like to add something to what you guys are saying, because I think, like it or not, I think one of the main contributors to us being confident in ourselves as Singaporeans are NDPs, because they brought us all together and they shoved it up our backside. And they made us sing those songs.
Yep.
And it came to the point where Home, which was not written for NDP, became a national song.
Well, I also feel, sorry to cut you off, that's the beauty of Home, is that in all its glory, right, it's the sincerest form of praise. You know what I mean? It's not, it sounds like, you can tell when someone forced you to write something, and this was the most natural
genuine.
sounding.
It was
and also, I feel like because of everything that came after that, tried to emulate it, tried to reverse engineer it, but it just isn't the same as the original. This is the most sincerest form, like you're trying to say. Like,
But it is, all it takes is one song, maybe. But the point is that there's an article in today's paper about how Home becomes the thing that resonates with all Singaporeans to feel Singaporean.
For sure.
Right? And that is what it is, isn't it? You just feel it. You don't have to, it doesn't have to sound a certain way. Home is quite Western. Maybe there's a little Oriental lilt to it somehow, but it's not anthemic,
yeah.
Right.
you know, but it just makes people feel it. You feel it, then you sing it. And another thing is that when I was doing Mad Chinaman as an album, and I looked at what I grew up with, the multicultural environment, which had Indian, Chinese, Malay, and everything inside. I used the only thing I could use was the folk songs of those ethnicities, right? Bengawan Solo is a song I knew from, you know, like, and then I realized that we don't have our own folk song. We didn't have folk song. How can we have a folk song?
Yeah,
We were
not
only
yet.
at that time,
Yeah.
And then we were 25 years old only. But Home is now over 20 over years old, right? And is still being sung by the folks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe now
Essentially, it is a folk song.
it's
become a
becoming
folk
one.
song.
Not
It'll
yet,
become a
maybe,
folk
and
How
maybe
great
50
is
years.
it that I get to live through this? So thank
So
you so
maybe
much.
you guys are in the process of, it's now your turn. You know, I mean, if you keep doing that, the song, I mean, that becomes us. Like Home has become us in some way.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to do the next one. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
and-
in your hands now.
You know, listening to him speak about this is making me realize how important all this is. Because people are always like, oh, another new song this year, why do we need another new song?
Yeah.
I feel like we have to keep trying.
Yeah, we have to keep
We have to
making
make
new
more.
songs.
We
Yeah.
have to make new songs. We have to keep trying. We have to give them a snapshot of, for example, when Lin Ying and Evan wrote The Road Ahead, which we were both on.
Yeah.
To me, that was like the perfect snapshot. When you listen to that song,
that
it
point,
brings you
yeah.
back to the difficulties of the pandemic. You know, you're like, I'm back in 2020.
I think
And you're-
every year it has to be a response, you know,
Correct,
to the
yeah.
times.
It's a snapshot
and
of
as
what
long
was
as
happening.
As you said, a snapshot, a genuine response to the times, and as long as it's a sincere rendition and not, as you also correctly pointed out, not to mimic the previous success, I think it will find success in some
And you
way.
can't
lah.
force it, you know. You got to
You
let
cannot.
it evolve.
Yeah, you
It's just-
cannot. Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
There's no amount of money you can throw at it. There's no amount of like, make me a good song, you know?
For sure. And you know this Tamil song that I wrote, Singe Nadu, right? The one.
Oh, bro, that is a beautiful
Thank you, brother.
song.
Thank you. Thank you.
You need to do it. You need to have an English verse.
English verse,
It would really, like.
Man. Just to open it up.
Cesare,
to the
are you open to
masses.
write it?
I'm open.
Are you down for it?
I'll let you know now officially. I'm open to write it.
Man, let's
But
do that.
that is one of the songs that I look forward to in NDP actually.
Oh man, thank you
Singa
so
Nadu,
much.
yeah.
So that was a response to the current times. So why is because we're talking a pre-conversation. We're talking about my induction into the Tamil language learning and promotion committee. When I was like really, just new into the industry, I was a virgin man. Seriously, I was like didn't know where I was going, what I'm going to do with it, and I was kind of condemned for my slang, in Vasantham Star. So when I got inducted into this committee, I was like, okay, let me see what I can do, and then I realized that everybody is talking about only Muneru Valiba, and everybody's saying the Tamil community does have a bit of they are not very satisfied that we don't have new songs in Tamil to sing. So it was a response for me. It was a response, And then Dick called me for Singapore, I think, one of the years, and then I performed. And Dick asked me, "Hey, so no Tamil songs after Muniru Aliba?" It was a genuine question. You see.
Everybody's pushing you towards that championing it. You got to do something about it, champion.
And I think I have a lot of complexity. Like I'm not good enough. I'm too new. Who am I to do this? I'm nobody in that position to do something like that. Still new, right, to the industry.
Yeah.
Like someone else should do it, right? Someone more established should do it, right?
Yeah.
Then finally it came to a point where, you know what? I think it's got to be me lah. Let me just do it. And then I did it. And you won't believe it. One of the first people I sent was Dick himself.
Yeah.
And he gave me very encouraging feedback about it lah. And very honest feedback as well.
But
And then,
that's more from a point of view of songwriting.
for sure, yeah. And it was once it released, of course, the first audience you have to satisfy is your core audience, right? Because it is a Tamil song at the end of the day. You have a job to do there. And I realized that it played during one of the award shows, and everybody started clapping after the song played. And they're not supposed to clap at that point, but they clapped, And I knew that, okay, it's going to be great. And last year we had, year before, we had 10 years of Singay Nada and we performed it.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. So I do believe in the fact that it needs to be a response, a genuine response to the times, and things will, really fall in place after that. People can smell it if you're faking it at the end of the day. People know, you see.
But also you have to think, how did Muniru become popular?
Yeah.
It's through NDP, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's through NDP,
Right.
and there was a concerted effort at that
Yes.
point to promote those songs. You Stand Up for Singapore, Muniru Valiba, and all these songs were promoted, and they were part of songbooks, and they were sung in schools. They were taught in
Exactly.
schools.
They were not.
It was engineered lah.
Yeah, but
Social
it was
engineering.
this Sing Singapore
Yeah.
campaign that I wrote home for that campaign.
What year was this?
Sing Singapore started, I think, in
80 something, I think.
1990 something,
Yeah.
1994 or 5. But I wrote home in 1997.
But there was a short break, right? After that, yours was like they brought it back again or something like that.
No.
right?
They were doing it every year.
Okay.
Every year. But then the purpose of it was to create what they call the Singapore Songbook. So they've had songs inside like Five Stars Are Rising, Sing
I've
Your
seen
Way Home, and then even Muniru was in there.
There were other Tamil songs also, but the problem was, there were. I ran through that book actually during the course of the research for this show, but they were too difficult to sing. Yeah, they were too difficult to sing. And I think you have to strike at least one first. Either like Muniru Valiba worked very well with the with everyone else, right? But Tamil people have got like a bit of tai chi with it, because for them it's like, it's not properly in Tamil, that kind of thing.
Okay,
It's not. Because, how do I say this? It's like, instead of Mari Kita, instead of that, it's Mari Kita. It's like
the accent
phrasing,
is
the
stress.
phrasing, the stress points, and where you elongate is not on point.
Okay, got it.
And you know that it's written by a Tamil person, but it's not composed by a Tamil person.
I get
When you hear it, you know it,
Yeah, the nuance of it is
the nuance is
right.
it has to be there. Like if not, you won't satisfy the core audience. You see. So my job in Singay Nada.
I never knew that.
Yeah. You can ask. You can ask.
Who did?
I actually J.S. Sudas, I think, a
He's
writer.
well-known.
Yeah, but then there was I think Raffles, a music professor from Raffles who composed it, who set it to tune.
Raffles?
Yeah.
What Raffles?
Raffles,
Stanford
RI lah, I think RI.
Oh, Raffles
RI,
Institution.
right. Correct. Something like that, right? Yeah.
Hey, but that said, the Malay go-to song is Chan Mali Chan.
Chan Mali
Which
Chan.
is not really like, is it a...
Man, it's your time to rise.
I thought this is, yeah.
I have no clue.
But it is, right?
Why?
I mean,
Because
everybody sings that song.
So the thing is, being in Indonesia the past year, I've started to realize that a lot of is interpolated from
For sure.
their folk
For sure.
songs.
It's their folk song, actually.
From Indonesian immigrants who come here with song.
And we made it ours.
And we made it ours.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it lah. Is that like they'll come up to me and like, do you have any Singapore, I'm doing Indonesian interview and do you have any Singapore folk songs? And I'll sing it and they're like, that's not a Singapore folk song, that's our folk song. And I'm like,
Yeah.
It's from the region. Yeah, it's from
and you
the
start to realize how the boundaries are man-made.
You
If
know,
you think about how we separate ourselves, it's
Yeah.
man-made boundaries, but the culture is actually
No, when I did Rasa Sayang on the Mad Chinaman, Malaysia claimed it was theirs, Indonesia claimed it was
Indonesia,
theirs.
yeah.
So,
Nona is what you call an Indonesian girl.
yeah.
No, I mean, this is very common. Like, Rumi, right? The poet.
The poet, yeah.
right? He's claimed by Turkey. He's claimed by Afghanistan. he's claimed by Iran.
Yeah.
And he belongs to everyone.
Because of the border drawing,
for sure, for sure. So I think these things are nuances that you can afford to kind of live with. Like it's okay,
I mean, it's okay for me because my heritage is Indonesian, So that makes me happy that there is a part of where I come from and where Zubir Said came from, or all these icons of the past. And I look back and go like, I do come from a musical culture, and you start to think of you drawing the lines back and further back and further back, and you start to realize that actually there's really, like you said, there's really a lot there for us to draw from. That just because we draw a line here and draw a line there and say rendang come from here or nasi lemak come from there, when actually it's literally all the same recipes for the same thing.
But chicken rice comes from here.
From
chicken,
here, then, can you debate that? You can, right?
Yeah.
The struggle is what we're talking about as a Singaporean artist that always struggles, you see. Because I think one thing is we're very small, we're too small. And the world is our hinterland at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you need a certain period of insulation, a prolongated period of insulation for a very organic and strong sense of identity and culture to develop. Any region requires
Our workshop is not done yet.
So we will never have that, though. That's the truth, right? Because all the transit cities, we're also transit cities. A lot of foreigners are going to pour in and go out all times, and Singaporeans are going to move out, move back in, etc. And because of globalization and the internet, we will never have that. That's the truth.
Yeah.
So I feel like if we do not lean into ourselves and find out what's our identity, and be spiritual with this process, we will end up having an existential spiritual crisis as individuals and as a nation. And I think that's where art and music has got a very pivotal role to play. Like, you need to know what is Singaporean art, what is Singaporean music, and of course the categories are broad, right? Like, there could be something that's made in Singapore that can be qualified as Singaporean. And then there could be something which is very strongly Singaporean in nature, language, musical, idioms going on, like what Dick Lee did. And that's also Singaporean. And I feel like, once again, it has to be an organic response to the time. So this Dick responded to those times, you see. He knew that he's going to be a lone voice in this ocean, but he's got to do it. He's got to do it. But Dick, I'm thinking, do you think the lack of, not having a strong rooting into the Chinese culture made you search for it more and made you end up doing these things, experiments with the album?
Well, for me, it was the thing that made me do that more was that I went to Japan. And I went to Japan not as a Singaporean artist because they didn't really, they did see, okay, you're from Singapore, that's interesting. But what I brought with that album, The Magi Man, was a multicultural sort of sound. And I landed in Japan at the height of world music craze.
Fusion music.
So I became a fusion world music artist. And then I found myself...
We should really categorize him as that. As a fusion artist, right? No,
which is what the album was,
Yeah, it was ahead of its time.
And I
found
found myself doing that almost exclusively, focusing on that when I was in Japan. So I started to look at my Asianness more than my Singaporeanness. But I wanted to something that that we were talking about that reminded me of what I was thinking about. And this comparison is of being an immigrant country, right? Think about America. It's an immigrant country, but look at the music they created. The genres that have come out, R&B, jazz, country and Western, right?
Yep.
Are they American music? Is that all American? Or are their own genres in their own right? Are they so they've become sort of borderless also?
Yeah.
But they are actually American, right? And they came from one country.
I mean, there's a long history for American music. And of course, when we look at any music that's got black history, whether it's funk, blues, R&B, jazz, even rock for that matter, a lot of it comes from Africa, right? Because, of the slave trade back then. Africans bring their musical culture, polyrhythm styles, harmonies, even blues, for an example. They say blues comes from the North African region where there are more Islamic African countries because the scale of the blues resembles the Islamic adhan call to prayer. So I think America has had the advantage of immigration. And of course, the Latin people are also bringing in their styles of music, reggaeton and things like that are happening. From the Caribbean, you've got reggae.
So, I mean, there are so many subgenres.
We have that too. Yeah. We have that
too. But what made each genre rise and how come we identify it as American? You know what I mean?
But one thing is we don't have the critical audience. Like
Yeah.
for an example, when dance hall is booming, you have dance halls literally.
No, wait. You forgot
in the
one
region.
important thing. All of these genres are in English.
Oh, okay. You mean the language here?
I mean, the language unites it. I mean, if it's in different languages, it'll be more segregated, right? But the American-made music is in English, and the borders, the boundaries are all washed away like Beyonce is now.
So you're saying
country
that
western.
when Singaporean music is made more in English, it can.
Oh, we need to think about that. We need to think about something that can erase some boundaries, which
So-
is why I suggested maybe add an English verse. You know, what I
Sure.
mean?
So I think
which you've
that
done.
brings us to the next part of the conversation, which is bilingualism, right?
Yeah, so-
it's the boon and the bane, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, because I might write in English, but there are we are probably the only country where we're so effective. I mean, of course, there's Malaysia also. They're trilingual, actually, in that sense. They could be. We are one of those countries where we're effectively bilingual. But if we put out a playlist right now, right, it's going to be radically different. It's going to be radically different, because of our bilingualism and our roots. Like, what were you listening to when you're like a kid at home? Tell me what was playing.
All English music. And see, I have a tidbit about this, right? Is that as a young artist, I was often with label execs and with people higher up. I was often put in a position where, what do you want to do? And is it Malay or Chinese? You know what I mean? It's never English because people are like, there's a precedence for, if you want to do Mando Pop, we have a list of successful Mando Pop artists whose
Fit you
route
in.
you can follow.
Yeah.
You were asked to do Mando.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
were
in general, because I'm an English-speaking artist, I could do both. And then, if you want to do Malay, which was what people were pushing me towards, right? You want to do Malay? Go Malaysia. There's a list of Singaporean artists who have made it in Malaysia. And in every single room, I said the same thing. Like, but I think in English, how? And it made me feel ashamed, because at home I'll speak 70% English, 30% Malay. It's just the nature of the circumstance of our living condition. Is that at school you speak English. When you go out, you speak English. You order stuff, you speak English. Your brain starts to think in English. And then for a year or two in the mid 2010s, I was writing Malay, Malay writers were writing for me. I was writing in Malay. And that was the most horrible time in music that I had. Not because I was writing in Malay, but it was because I felt like my expression, right, wasn't, I don't know how to say this in this language. I don't know how to express myself fully because my entire life I've been thinking of things in this one language, right?
Language, yeah.
And labels are pushing me towards, no, you gotta have a Malay single because, you're Malay. And I'm like, no, technically I'm not. It's a complicated conversation again, And for the longest time I struggled with that until the past few albums where I've written with a lot of people already. And I realized that like every time I'm stuck with a lyric, right? I have this song, again, back to this song called Memory in my album. I wrote it in English. And then when I came to the chorus, I didn't know what, I was stuck. The first word that came to mind was sayangku because I was trying to get my wife to order food. It's like, sayangku. And
I heard
then
that song, man. I like
everybody
that song,
looked at me and went like, Then I was like, is it weird if I put a Malay word in an English song? They're like, yeah, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? It feels right. And I was like, yeah, it feels right. It feels right. And and from then it informed my creation process in a sense where I've always like, okay, I want to prove people I can write in English as a Malay guy. Like, I'm a fantastic English song. Let's prove to them, right? But I've chucked away this 20-30% in Bahasa where there are such key words in here that I can use in my music
Nailed it, yeah.
to extend and express in a way that only I can do. For example, Mad Chinaman, right, is a song only Dick Lee can do, believe
For
me or
sure,
not.
yeah.
No other person in the
Somebody
world.
covered
I agree.
it.
No other person would have came up with it, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean? And that informed me a lot. Like, my wife speaks a lot about your music also. And she's like, she always uses it as a reference. Who could do Mad Chinaman other than Dick Lee? You imagine another Chinese guy doing Mad Chinaman, how crazy that would sound. I'm like, yeah, because of who he is, his experience, right? And his dissonance with whatever was happening, Mad Chinaman works,
You see, this is what I would love. I wanted to come and tell you guys this. I would love to see you do the Mad Javanese man, the Mad Tamil man, because and don't call it that.
Yeah.
But the point of it is you make the music as that, as that person, but make it in English. You see,
like an alter ego.
No, it's you.
Okay.
You got to realize
Embrace
that's who,
it that
yeah,
it's who you
embrace
are.
it.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, for example, you write in a very you're very good at the ethnic the sound of it, right? The music, the what do you call it, the musicality, the way the melody is.
Yeah.
But imagine if you just did that, but it's in English.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm
You don't have to
working
make it
Yeah.
sound
towards.
Western. So write a Malay song, but put all English words.
Yeah.
Actually,
This is what I'm trying to do,
I've been
yeah.
trying
That's
that
exactly
too.
what
I've
I'm
been trying
trying
that
to
too. So, in Indian singing, there's this melismatic singing, right?
Yeah.
This little notes, that
It's
you play
difficult AF.
with. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to write songs in English, but I'm trying to do that melismatic singing. But it has to be natural. So what's the thing? I found a new trick that I'm experimenting with. I mean, it's still very early at this point, but I mean, that could come a day where I'll share with you guys. Hey guys, I was talking about that. Here's a song, that kind of thing. So instead of composing it on the piano or the guitar, you compose it with a tampura. You know what's a tampura? You know that
What's
string
the tampura?
instrument?
Okay,
that
yes.
drone,
I know
that drone
that
instrument,
drone,
right?
yeah.
So you play the drone, and the harmonium, the pump organ, the Indian pump organ. You play the chords on that, and you compose.
And it only has
And you-
certain notes anyway.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
You
and
can't
you write
do every
and you
chord.
write in English. No, it's like just the piano actually. Yeah, but the range is shorter, smaller range lah. Yeah, so
Do
you
you
write
feel-
in English using the drone and the pump organ. That's what I've been trying to do. I've written 4 songs so
That's
far.
really cool. I want to ask you this. Do you feel like when you have ethnic instruments like that, your brain naturally gravitates towards what it's supposed to sound like? So are you fighting with that when you're writing?
No, actually, it is pivoting me towards a very organic and natural
Okay.
place. It's making me lean into my, Indian and Tamil roots, but at the same time, it's also allowing me to think freely in English.
That's cool.
So something new is coming out of it. So what Dick is saying, I completely resonate with it because I'm trying it right now. And I think there is a version of that in self-soothing as well. I see that Sazairi, that Sazairi who is, introspective, who is thinking, who am I? Where am I coming from?
Yep.
I want to acknowledge the place that I am right now, but I also want to acknowledge the place that I was at. And I'm going to acknowledge the place that I'm going to with this.
Yeah.
So there's 3 things happening. He's processing the past, he's processing the present, and he's entering a portal into the future through the writing process. Tell me about that, man. Like, what was the struggle for the whole album, and what were the points where I know it happened very organically, but were there places where you're like, oh, should I, make this
the time.
conscious decision,
All the
or should I
time.
not? Yeah.
This album creation process was the most conscious for me because I realized after, I think 4 albums, 18 singles or something like that, right? That I started out as I feel like my talent is as a top line melody writer.
Hey, by the way, I'm very jealous of you, man.
Why, bro?
This guy's prolific. Like, you go to Spotify, like 2023 got 1, 2022 got a lot, 2020. He's
have a
like
lot
got
of
so
time.
many every
Was
other something,
this a
so I'm like,
Sony
damn,
album?
I want to do that.
Yeah, all of them are.
But the thing that resonated with me most was the sense of the island when you
Really?
mentioned it. Yeah, because I've always believed that if there's anything, if there's any sound that we should have,
I also.
it is the island sound. Because
Exactly, yes.
if you look at how Brazil is like bossa nova, and then keroncong, which is something like Peranakan,
Yes.
is very Indonesian.
Yes.
Sort of like, and it suits us.
Yeah.
I love that.
Hawaiian
I love
music,
that.
Exactly.
has
So,
it-
going back to what I was saying, is that after making a lot of songs, I became conscious that I always focus on one aspect of it, like the lyrics is supposed to feel like the whatever. But with this album, it's more like when I put it on and I close my eyes, where do I imagine to be? And so before I even wrote anything in the album, right, I was reminded of the time as a kid, my dad is an audiophile. So he worked 3 jobs to be able to sustain his hobby of collecting records and music. So growing up, I was a very overstimulated kid. I cannot listen to loud noise, bright lights. So I would often, when he's playing his music, I would often rebel against that because the speakers are big. Audiophile lover speakers, every weekend go Adelphi, like, oh, this speaker, that speaker. It's like speakers that reach to the ceiling. And it was very overwhelming for me. So I would often be in a corner of the room with headphones on, playing my rebellious music. So, I hate your jazz. I'm gonna play my punk rock or whatever, right? And for me, the album, that informed the title of the album for me, Self-Soothing. Because music for me is a process of escaping all of this. And being in Singapore, right, I feel like that was one of the most critical tools that I could have to be the person that I am today. Because otherwise I would be so overstimulated by, I look out my window, there's a car park. I look outside my front house, there's a shopping center, auntie go market downstairs,
Write
upstairs,
about
auntie
that.
yelling.
Write about that. That's
No,
interesting.
exactly. So I wrote about what I did to get away from all that so that I could live my life well. And so that's why I called it self-soothing. It's like the process of actually going back to the things that really help you and doing something instead of, and I'm a very sensitive singer-songwriter, very introspective, emotional, all about me, narcissism. And so I decided for once
think
to...
we
That's
all
what
are to a certain
songwriting is
degree.
about.
No, but
Sure,
like,
like,
and we all are, and we accept that to some degree, right?
For sure.
But for me, it's all about, this album was all about projecting that outwards lah. Say, okay, now how, if I could project this outwards, right? And if I can put you in my position, and throughout all the media and the marketing and everything, remind you that we are in an island, right? And to not honk when you drive, relax. And this is my identity of Singapore is always trying to be calm in an environment that is stopping me from being calm. Everywhere you go, you get in the Grab, the uncle agitated already. Yeah, everything is so hyper stimulating.
Yeah.
And this album for me was a battle against that, on how like we as Singaporeans can try to live our own life and remind ourselves of how this place should look like.
There's no one bad dog.